Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Doom for DOS, but it was ported to other systems as well, and since the source code release, it's also been ported to other systems unofficially. This is one of the most historically important games of all time. Just across any genre, across any platform, doesn't matter what it is, this is one of the most important. For one, if it weren't for Doom, you wouldn't have the first-person shooter genre today. I mean, games like Wolfenstein 3D and Battlezone did precede it. They were first-person shooters technically. In fact, Wolfenstein 3D was the first actual first-person shooter as we know them today. But Doom popularized it. Doom made it really prevalent in the gaming scene. For one, it also introduced this really innovative, at the time, graphics engine that was pseudo 3D. It was 2.5D technically. And that was one of the first games to actually do that and really propel PC gaming forward into this is where the technical stuff is going to go and really pioneer everything. In addition, it was probably the first game that I know of that actually had network multiplayer. You could actually play this game over a network in 1993. That was unheard of before then. I mean, we had hot seat multiplayer. We had where you could actually play it on the same computer. We had it where you could play it on the same console or something like that. We did not have any such thing as network gaming until Doom came out. At least as far as I know. There may have been something before it, but as far as I know, it was the first one to actually do network play. In addition, it was one of the first games to be considered almost too violent. In fact, it's been banned in several countries. I know Germany banned it for a very long time, to where you could only get it in adults-only stores and such like that. I believe they lifted that ban recently, too. You have this game to thank for the ESRB in partial. I mean, in addition to like Mortal Kombat and such like that. But this game spawned all sorts of controversy when it came out. It was immediately recognized as a landmark. I mean, nobody had ever heard of anything like this before. I mean, there were similar games, of course, but as a whole package, nothing like this had ever been happened before. And for me, it's especially important because if it weren't for Doom, I probably wouldn't be a gamer today. I mean, I did like Atari 2600 before I actually played Doom, but once I played Doom, gamer for life, basically. And of course, PC gamer. I mean, that's just needless to say. But still, having all this hype around it, having all this just nostalgia for me, is it really that great of a game? Well, let's find out. Now, when this was released in 1993, it was absolutely mind-blowing. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. For one, in addition to having length and width in its dimensions, it actually had the dimension of height, which is also known as depth, thus making it an actual 3D game despite using 2D artwork and such. And so nobody had ever seen anything really like that before, and it was mind-blowing. In addition, it didn't have only perpendicular walls. They actually had them at a rectangular grid, so all of the walls can be slanted however way they wanted to do that. And it presented this very dramatically different level design than had ever been thought possible, really. Because if you've played games like Wolfenstein 3D, you know that the design of those maps is extremely corridor-filled. There's not a lot of really inventive ways of going around the levels. Whereas in Doom, they actually were able to put in these diagonal walls and such that would create a more realistic, a more open world than just these square areas that you would run around in. It also had full texture mapping on every single surface in this game. So, for once, you actually had actual textures on your walls. You had a lot of detail in your environments as a whole, as opposed to just having flat colors like in, say, Wolfenstein. And then, of course, it had the varying light levels and custom palettes for each area that you were in, which was pretty much unheard of to that point as well. All of the lighting in previous games was kind of flat, whereas in this one, it was really dynamic for the time anyway. It's still considered static lighting, but it was dynamic lighting for the time, and you would go into an area and maybe it'd be really dark, and then you'd go into the next area and it'd be really bright. And there was a lot of contrast between the environments, and it really did help to create this absolutely phenomenal atmosphere. This atmosphere that's simultaneously creepy, but also action-packed. You never really feel like it's this atmosphere where it's trying to be too scary, because it never does try that. And that's part of the sound design as well. For one, you have the sound effects themselves. I mean, there's really no voice acting in this game apart from growling, screaming, that sort of thing. And all of that is done very well as well. But the sound effects themselves are absolutely phenomenal. All of the guns sound beefy. Every single one of them. They all sound powerful. Even the pistol sounds powerful. And when you're using these, they just feel right, partially because of the sound effects. And you also have the ambient sounds, which really up the atmosphere really, really well. But one of the things in this game really does steal the show: the music. This has to be one of the best action game soundtracks of all time. For one, because it's all thrash metal. Basically, every single song in this game was based on some metal song that had been previously made, like stuff by Metallica or Iron Maiden, Pantera, those kind of people. All of the music in this game is absolutely phenomenal. And if you don't know E1M1 at Doom's Gate, basically, then you need to go listen to it. Just go listen to it, bask in its awesomeness, and you will understand what I mean by the music is awesome, as is the rest of the sound design and the presentation as a whole. Now, of course, the storyline in Doom is incredibly simple. You're a space marine. You're stationed on Phobos, which is one of the moons of Mars. All of a sudden, demons from hell invade, and you are basically just there to send them back where they came from. That's kind of it. You don't really need any more storyline than that. I mean, your character doesn't even have a name. So people have just taken to calling the protagonist in Doom, Doom Guy. And this has persisted on up through Doom 3, and I'm sure Doom 4 as well. But anyway, really it's the gameplay that matters. Doom was really nothing majorly different from previous first-person shooters like Wolfenstein 3D. What it did well was really perfect that style. There really, to my knowledge, has not been a better first-person shooter in this particular style than Doom. In fact, games after it that were first-person shooters, up until the late 90s when they started really differentiating themselves from it, like with games like Quake 2 or Unreal, games up until that era were called, if they were first-person shooters, they were called Doom clones, because they played exactly like this, or tried to emulate it. None of them were as successful. For good reason. This is one of the best games ever made. I mean, I really can't think of anything truly negative to say about it. I mean, I didn't like some of the level design. That was only a couple of levels, though, in particular. Overall, it was not a problem. In fact, it really flows very nicely, despite having that mechanic where you have to go find the keys to open the doors or flip the switches or whatever. So it ends up kind of being like a maze sort of deal where you have to end up going all over the place and kind of backtracking a lot to find out where you're supposed to go. But that never really gets tiring in Doom. It's not like in other games where if you're looking for the keys, it kind of feels like a drudge. Because in Doom, you're always doing something actiony. You're always blasting something. There's always some challenge to await you. Part of this is from the difficulty system. For one, it has 6 difficulty settings. So you can either play it on the lowest difficulty, which is incredibly, ridiculously easy. You'll fight maybe a handful of enemies in the entire maps. And you'll take almost no damage. You'll do ridiculous amounts of damage, etc., etc. Whereas if you play on the higher difficulties, I play on the second highest difficulty. And it provides just the right amount of challenge to where I feel this really big drive to beat the game, but I never feel too frustrated when I get annihilated or something like that, or maybe I'm running low on ammo. I never feel really truly frustrated by it. It's all part of the fun. And, I mean, they're never really scarce with health pickups or ammo pickups or whatever. It's just you have to learn how to use them appropriately. And that's something that a lot of modern games have really lost. They've really lost that kind of almost strategic element to them, where you have to look at a situation where maybe you've got some health packs in front of you. You're like, do I take it now or do I wait and maybe come back if I got severely injured or something like that? Because in the newer ones, obviously, it's just regenerating health and really plentiful med packs and stuff like that. And you're always given the right amount of tools for the job. You're never given it too much or too little. It's always just right. And all of the tools you have in your arsenal, all of your weapons, are suitably beefy. They all feel just right. Like, the shotgun is always powerful. The rocket launcher just feels badass and stuff like that. And then, of course, you have the epicness of the BFG 9000. I mean, I really don't need to say much about that. It is self-explanatory. It is one of the most awesome video game weapons ever. Period. Anyway, in addition to having great weapon design, great level design in general, great enemy design, because they have a surprising amount of variety in the enemies you fight, and they all kind of attack you different ways, and you have to find different, kind of almost different ways to exploit their weaknesses, or maybe you just have to maneuver just properly or something like that. All of it runs butter smooth. I mean, incredibly smooth gameplay, incredibly fast-paced, even for 1993, which is really surprising for a DOS game, because they were known for being really slow, and then when Doom comes out, it just shatters all expectations. And of course, if you like the basic deathmatch gameplay that Doom has to offer, then, well, of course, it has the network gameplay. But one thing that really surprises me about Doom is its lasting appeal. I still play this today. I mean, I play it on a very regular basis. I've had it since 1993. I mean, I didn't have Ultimate Doom until recently, but I had Doom since 1993. And that was basically the game that got me into gaming. It especially got me into first-person shooter gaming, even after Wolfenstein 3D. It remains one of my favorite games of all time to this day. And for good reason. It is one of the best games ever made. So if you have not played Doom, if you have never played it, play it. You need to play it. I don't consider you a gamer unless you've at least played it. Unless you're, of course, not into first-person shooters, in which case, go do your own thing. Every first-person shooter fan needs to play Doom. At least once. If you don't like it, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that's your thing, I guess. And of course, if you go for the Ultimate Doom, I warn you already, the fourth episode, Thy Flesh Consumed, is brutally difficult, even for old-school Doom fans like myself. So, don't feel bad if you go into Thy Flesh Consumed and suddenly find that it is brutally difficult and practically impossible. Still, I can think of really nothing bad to say about Doom. If you don't like the way Doom plays, then get one of the mods. I mean, there's tons of mods for Doom, and they still mod it to this day. Its lasting appeal is really just mind-blowing. It's been ported to pretty much every gaming system in existence. That should tell you something. So, if you are a gamer and you don't own a copy of Doom, get it. Just end of story. Thanks for watching.